All right, we are at 5:30 p.m., so we will call this meeting to order. This is a public meeting of the School Board of West Bend Joint School District Number 1, more than 24 hours prior to the meeting. Notice of the time, place, date, and subject matter of this meeting was posted at the entrance doors of the Education Service Center and at the West Bend Community Memorial Library. A copy was also sent to the Daily News, WBSD, Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, and other media sources that have requested notice of our meetings. And ask Superintendent Wimmer to confirm that this meeting is properly posted.
Yes, it was.
Great. Before we rise for the pledge, as we walked in tonight, we saw the district's flag flying at half-staff in remembrance of the events of September 11th. And so as we recite tonight's pledge, I just ask that we remember those who lost their lives on that date and all those who gave their lives in the years following. Also, we can enjoy the freedom and liberty to gather at meetings just like this. With that, let's rise for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We recognize the quorum with all 7 members of our board present tonight. Next is the approval of our agenda, which was published in advance. Assuming there are no questions regarding the agenda, I will make a motion to approve the agenda. Will there be a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. A motion and second to approve the agenda. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. We next move to public participation. I have one participant comment card, and it's from Ms. Tanya Lohr. So we invite her up to the podium. Now, normally I would read Board Policy 187, and if the board would like me to do so, I'm happy to do that. Ms. Lohr, I think you can assert. I think, Ms. Lohr, you can assert that you are familiar with the policy, Board Policy 187. Very good. And Ms. Lohr, you've indicated on your participant comment card that you are a parent of a student in the district and an employee of the district. Is that correct? Great. So on screen behind me is your 3-minute timer, and the next 3 minutes are yours. Oh, pause one moment. There we go. Microphone is ready. Thank you very much, Tim. And Ms. Lohr, the next 3 minutes are yours.
Thank you. My name is Tanya Lohr, and I am a teacher and parent in the West Bend School District, as well as the president of the West Bend Education Association. I'm here to talk about the push by a small number of people in the community to ban books in our public schools. And I think it's time to call out exactly what kinds of books this group wants to ban. All the books targeted are books that are written from the perspective of members of groups considered minorities in our society, and this perspective is treated as equal rather than as less in these books. The people trying to ban these books come from groups considered the majority. They have had the luxury of growing up surrounded by books that speak to them, make sense to them, and empower them. But schools are changing as they realize the books and curriculum they offer don't speak or make sense to all students, but they should. So members of the book banning group are now faced with books that do not speak to them, make sense to them, or leave them feeling empowered. And it's time to point out that the discomfort and anger they are feeling about these books is the same feeling of discomfort and anger students who belong to the groups represented in these books feel when reading all the other books on the shelf. And I think there's great irony that this group of people are the ones who keep complaining about the district's reading and literacy scores. Literacy increases when kids increase their reading, and people read books because what they are reading speaks to them, makes sense to them, and empowers them. So shouldn't we be putting choices on the shelves that speak to all children rather than just a few if we truly want to raise our scores? Some people from the book banning club might say, well, the students can just read all the other books on the shelf. But aren't these many of the same adults who claim they couldn't be on the book reconsideration committee because then they'd be required to read a book, one single book they didn't feel reflected their values or their lifestyles? And yet they want to turn around and require students from minority groups to read not just one book that doesn't reflect their values or lifestyles, but one after another, after another, after another. It's shameful, quite frankly, that we're still even talking about this. As soon as the obvious racism and homophobia showed itself, this witch hunt should have been stopped dead in its tracks. This is racism, this is homophobia, and this is flat-out hate. And hate has no place in our public schools, which serve all students from all backgrounds. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was our only participant comment card for tonight. So we will move forward with the remainder of our agenda as soon as I refer back to my notes. All right. Next is our consent agenda, and on our consent agenda, we have a number of items to consider, including minutes of the August 28th, 2023 regular board meeting and executive session, minutes also of the August 25, 2023 special board meeting. We have 2 contracts for considerations, 1 resignation, no retirements, but also Cooperative Educational Service Agency, or CESA, 6 school psychology contract, and also disbursements posted through September 8th, 2023. Any questions on any items on the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would move to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kelly. Motion and second to approve the consent agenda. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. We move on to reports, and Superintendent Wimmer, your report, please.
Just to echo Board President's sentiments around the meeting of September 11th, the students that we're serving now were not born when those events happened. So in addition to their families, our schools are positioned to be the one sharing that history and that understanding of the significance of that day. Our schools did that in a variety of ways today, including special announcements, moment of silence at the high school. Badger really has learned about and promotes the September 11th National Day of Service and Remembrance. So a lot of different activities across our schools. Also, several years ago, our students partnered with Kewaskum. There is a state memorial. The 9/11 Wisconsin Memorial is in Kewaskum, and our students helped fundraising efforts for that memorial. And that is a memorial to help us remember victims, honor those who responded, and again, celebrate our resilience. So our thanks to all of our students and our community members who help us recognize today's significance as well. Since we last met, we've welcomed back our students. We had our first few days of school, and today marks that first day of our 4K program. Our high school students will begin next month with us, so we're excited about that. Startup challenges were clearly around transportation and busing. Generally, you always expect, some late routes, things like that, as students remember which bus to get on, all of that nature. Our startup is a lot more delays than what we've normally experienced. So our team here works directly with the team at Right Way. I've had conversations with their CEO around what we're experiencing. We certainly know that there's a trend in shortage of drivers right now, and we're covering routes, so I'm thankful. We're down 11 drivers for our 45 morning routes that we have. We're down 13 drivers for the 45 afternoon routes. That has almost doubled and tripled on those since just a couple weeks prior to school, having to lose drivers due to medical situations, those kinds of things. So they're on it. They've been getting us the staff we need, but when subs come in and grab those routes, it creates delays, errors, things of that nature. So we've been working on our diligence in communication so that our families know and understand what's going on so that they can make a choice, hold where you're at, I'll pick up, or yep, we'll just wait. We understand that there's a wait. So again, they're covering those routes. I'm thankful some other agencies are dealing with having to cut off transportation to whole schools to try and minimize that. So thankful for that, but we just want to acknowledge and apologize for what our families and our students have been experiencing the first few days, and know that our entire team here, as well as all the way through the Right Way organization, is committed to ensuring we have consistent staff that we need, access to substitutes with that knowledge, and that we clean that up as soon as possible. So in addition, our charter trips are very limited. As you can imagine, they need every driver they have to deal with those tiers. So right now for athletics, we're having to move those departure times up. So sometimes they're leaving as early as 1 o'clock in the afternoon to get to, an after school or evening game. And we've just been working with a lot of our families, volunteer drivers, put out to everyone. If anyone's interested in doing their CDL Right Way, we'll absolutely pay for all of that. We have some people who are like, you know what, my kid's on that team, I can do this, and driving for just that reason. That's fine. So just let us know. in any way. But again, our apologies to our students, our staff as well, who are scrambling, trying to help kids with those routes, and our families too. So I'll keep the board informed through consistent updates, how we're going through that. Just speaking of open positions, again, you hear staffing shortages in the education field too. We are down to just a few certified staff positions that are open. We have a high school special education. We have that filled with a long-term sub, but kind of that forever home is still open and waiting for the right candidate. And then we had, as you know, because you acted on that resignation, a very late resignation. So we have an open elementary counselor position. So that counseling team is supporting that school, so they're not going unserved while we recruit. And in addition, just a shout out if people are looking for opportunities, we have 5 special education paraprofessional positions as well as supervisory aides at our schools and athletic events. So those are all posted on our website. And we have a variety of full-time, fully benefited positions that kind of had career pathways through our buildings and grounds. We have positions such as maintenance, a mechanic, daytime custodians, and groundskeeper. So I would just urge the public to take a look at our page. All of those positions are also listed through WeCan. It's kind of the online application process for public school systems, but certainly reach out to our HR department too, because we'd love to have you. Following up on books, everyone in the board knows that we just held our board work session on September 7th. So just for the sake of our community, the board met just last week to continue its work related to policy and practice regarding instructional material selection. Everything from that work session, the video, the slide deck can be found right in board docs. So that provided enough guidance for us to start moving forward with relooking at the Q1 book club selections and start moving through a process of reevaluating those and bringing those back to curriculum committee and keep the board apprised of our work in that. Again, we know that, and we've talked about continuously, it's an iterative process. We expect to be back at the table around all those next pieces. So just making sure our public's aware. We'll make sure and highlight that. We did so for the staff today so that they're aware. Dr. Trueblood's following up with staff who are impacted by those book lists so that they know what their next steps are. So we'll start that work, and then we'll follow up with our Wednesday district news so that our full community is aware too. So just that update is for the benefit of those who might not have been there or not on the board. And then, as you know, Epstein Ewan Architects was doing their preliminary assessments. They have assessed the building conditions inside and out. Now they're working with principals to schedule time to complete the assessment of capacity, utilization, and kind of that assessment against learning, optimal learning environments. So they'll do that while school's in session. So we started scheduling those. Our staff will get out some information so staff can have input around the educational adequacy of that space. And will help feed that assessment. So those are starting, I think, predominantly the 18th. We have a couple schools starting, and then a couple that following week. So they'll be phased. Again, that'll be part of that target deliverable this fall to kind of package all of that and bring a full update of that assessment to the board. And just wanted to highlight Green Tree Elementary is having a community info night, and they are indeed inviting the community. So Mr. Pulitz and the Green Tree staff have a community information event on Wednesday evening from 5 to 6:30. So if you want to learn more about community organizations, those who host clubs for children, they're going to have all different information set up, Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, YMCA sports, the rec department, Casa Guadalupe, hockey, 4-H, many more. So it's just a massive reach out to see what's available for students in the community, and all are welcome to attend. And congratulations to our student services team. They were successful in their grant writing efforts. We received word that their proposal for Education for Homeless Children and Youth grant was approved by the state. That will allow them to increase professional learning experiences, continue to improve supports for students and families who are experiencing homelessness or living in transitional situations. So the grant is a total of $30,000 over 2 years for those efforts. Also, we were advised that that team also was successful in receiving an alcohol and other drug abuse program grant application. That's accepted in the amount of $50,000 over a 2-year span, and that's for prevention activities for our students. So congratulations to our student service staff on that. And that concludes my report.
Right, thank you. Any questions for Superintendent Wimmer? All right, thank you. We'll move on to next. We would normally have discussion items, but we'd have no discussion items on the agenda this time. We had discussion items last time, which are being brought forward as action items. And so our first action item for consideration is construction manager recommendation. And I see that Tim Harder, Director of Facilities and Technology, is taking the podium. And Superintendent Wimmer, or Mr. Harder, are you kicking this off?
All
Go
right,
ahead.
I will start off. So Ms. Wimmer actually started and kind of kicked us off a little bit of talking about where our architects are at in the facilities process. And as you remember, 2 weeks ago we were here, we were talking a little bit about the RFP process related to hiring a construction manager. And so we have a little bit of an update for you this evening and then a recommendation for you to consider for action. So as a reminder to the board, our community watching, as to why you would look for a construction manager at this point in time. These are the big things that we are looking for from a partner, and really this is the third leg of that three-legged stool where we have the district, you have the architect, and then you have the construction manager. And in the first case that we're really looking for is we're looking at those accurate cost estimates. So no matter what proposal or solution that our architects may present to us, we want to be able to have some sort of a real, transparent cost piece that we can talk about at the board level here and with our community as they bring solutions. Not a pie in the sky, not a guesstimate, something based upon the work that they're doing currently in the field and being able to put real numbers for that. They're going to work with our architects as they start showing solutions around how can we construct this? Is that constructability there? Is there a way to do it cheaper? Sometimes you'll hear value-added engineering as a term that is utilized within the construction field, and making sure that we are doing the best that we can to find the cheapest but highest quality materials, that it's something that is easily constructible and that does not have a maintenance life cycle that we can't withstand within our current maintenance budget or as we go forward. So as part of the process, it's not just building of a building or redoing a remodel, it's also what does that life cycle look out 5-10 years on maintenance of the equipment that we would put into a new building or a remodeled space at that point in time. They would then be in charge of the phasing schedules during construction if a project was pushed through at that point in time. Being in a school district, we don't have the luxury of just saying, hey, we're going to do work for 12 months straight here. We are going to do work for 12 months if you have a big enough project, but you have to phase that around the building. So last time I gave the example of Silverbrook where they would work on a portion, that portion would open up, a group of students would move at a standard time like Christmas or a spring break or something like that, and then they would work on another portion of that building. They manage that piece for us. They also work on community engagement and communication support, so we can be very transparent with our community on the options that are being presented by our architects and to this board. And then it's really, they're the collaboration with all stakeholders to kind of pull that together. And so as we review that and as we look forward, we did start this process in late June, where we went out to multiple firms. We have gone through the interview process. We have gone through reference checks. We have gone through a couple of rounds of additional options for us. And so this evening, we will have a finalist recommendation for you with the goal then to bring forth, if the board approves a recommended candidate, to bring forth the contract that would happen then in October. So very similar to what you saw with our architectural firm where you selected a firm, the actual contract would come back at a later point in time.
Tim, Yep, just one of the things that we had talked about last time was there was no cost for the work at this point. And one of the questions that we were given to attend to was to kind of go back and talk about what if you only wanted them for this portion of the work and you don't stay the course with the selected firm all the way through. Can you just update the full board?
You
on
literally
there you go.
got my next slide for me. I appreciate that. So we did talk about, we did talk about this last time. So in the situation that, it's termed as the term in the industry is the pre-referendum service cost. Take out the fact of how it's funded or where the funding would come from before you get to a construction project. Our finalists and the recommended firm this evening are charging no upfront fees to us for that. So that is their piece of the contract as terms of what that would look forward. The only time would be as if we were to work with one firm, have a successful funding process, and then we would look to go to another firm. They would look to recoup those costs. So there is no cost if we go forward and we say, hey, there is no project that we're going to do here, or we go to referendum and it fails, or we choose to try this funding avenue and we don't go there. There is no cost up front for us from our recommended candidate. I gave the example of last time, so I copied this out. We gave a hypothetical $50 million project to be able to provide those responding to the RFP with a scaled approach to a construction management fee. And that fee is really that management of it. That is their staff, that is some of those different pieces around managing the construction process. It's the cost estimating, it's all of the technological pieces that happen on the back end side of it. So we gave a $50 million project across multiple sites to see how they would staff that and what they would look at in terms of fees. So you have a fee, so the hypothetical fee that I have up there is a 1.25% fee on a $50 million project would equal a $625,000 fee. Final costs on construction management are determined when a project is approved. So there is a sliding scale. If you go to a smaller amount of a project, that percentage fee does go up. That is across all of our respondents to our RFP. That is common in the industry where that does adjust. If you go to a larger amount of dollars, it doesn't change at that point in time. There are other costs that come into the building of construction and so forth. If they do self-performed work, you have to pay for things like temporary heat. So I remember when we built Silverbrook and they built the addition where the cafeteria and the gymnasium are on, we had to temporarily heat that during time because that was outside of our normal school building space. So there are other fees that get brought into that, and you would see how that is lined out in a contract if we were to move forward with that. We did reach out to both our finalists talking about cost estimation and communication engagement only options. And so we're seeing anywhere from, starting around 22,000 and up. A lot of that would depend upon the scope of work that we would ask as a district and in what we were looking forward. So we did reach out as that upfront commitment to what that would look like, but at minimum, you're looking at probably $22,000 or higher as part of that. And so we did want to follow up with that question for Mr. Donaldson. So those are kind of those commitment costs. Really, as we look at a recommended candidate, if we don't move forward with a project, no matter the funding or anything else, there is no cost to the district at that point in time. So after our process has been complete, the administration is recommending Findorf as our construction manager for the facilities review process and any resulting projects that would move forward and approved for construction by this board or the community. To give you an example of what their fee would be on the $50 million project that we had as for the RFP, it would be a 1.15% fee this evening. So I will answer any questions that you have after we've gone through that.
John?
So by approving Findorf as the construction managers, we are essentially, we're tying the knot with them for any future project moving down the road.
Yes.
But we don't have contracts written up for that work, do we?
No, so we would look at the contract that we would bring forth as a construction contract that would be related to this facilities review and any projects that would come out of that. So that would be what is coming back to you in October if you were to select them.
So
Tonight, we're
we'll
just
still
saying,
get to look at that.
yes, you will still see the full contract, and that will come through just like we did with the architects. Tonight, the ask is or the recommendation is to select them as a firm so we can go into those contract kind of negotiations and look at that base contract, and there are things that we will add and so forth as we go through that process, but that comes back to you for approval as a board.
But I mean, so yeah, we're not moving forward with obviously any construction projects. We're just getting a plan together with them.
Yep.
So I just wanted to know that we're not
Nope, that's a good
signing
question.
any
Yep.
contracts, making sure we're not in a contract till we get to kind of look at those or.
Yep, tonight you're just
discuss those
saying
pieces,
Findorf is the one if that's what the board chooses.
Correct. You're just accepting the recommendation of the firm itself. We'll do the contract piece. And then also in the last district news, I made sure after our last discussion to just reaffirm with our families and community exactly what it is that we are and aren't doing. Because again, people associate immediately like, oh, this means this. The board hasn't even seen the facilities assessment. We haven't engaged with the public. We don't know what that is. There's a long runway ahead of us of the work that has to be done. But what this does give us, as Tim was saying, is kind of that full transparency costing of the status of our facilities right now, and as we lead into what are the options we have so that we can go in with all of that. So again, as you were saying, just to acknowledge, it's just the selection of Findorf so that we can start negotiating the final contract.
And I'm glad for these questions because and for talking through this with us at 2 meetings, because on the surface, it would appear a bit presumptive to say, well, let's sign a contract for a construction manager. We haven't even decided necessarily to do construction. So let me just make sure I have this right and correct me where I'm wrong. So what we're really doing here is we're kind of reserving Findorf, saying we would like to engage you. We'd like to reserve you, so that as we start to get in potential recommendations on the side, they can be at our side advising. And they're compensated essentially only if we move forward with a project.
Yep, that is correct.
If ultimately we don't move forward with a project, then we all go our separate ways.
Yep, you are
I know
correct.
that's probably a gross generalization, but is it generally true?
You are correct, Chris. And so what's nice about that is that right now they're with us and they're with the architect. So as the architect is talking about solutions and what we currently have, they can compare what they've been building in other similar buildings and schools and commercial buildings, et cetera, and they can bring that along. If we get to the end of this process and we say, yep, we're not moving forth with a remodeling project out of this, we're not moving forth with a new building, whatever that may be, we part our ways and we're done. We have our contract with the architect at that point in time. If there would be a project that would move forth to construction, then they would be our construction management firm for that project moving forward.
John?
I just wanted to add, so
Sure.
I just wanted to make sure they're essentially going to be putting together bids of how much, estimating the cost, right?
Yep, so
They're not getting the work, essentially, we're not signing them, but they're going to give us basically a general bids of how much we think it's going to cost, so we can plan for a referendum if it moves that forward.
Yep,
right?
you are correct, Mr. Downs. So in this process, what they're gonna do is they're gonna take the last X number of buildings that they built. They will work with their subcontractors that they work with regularly or areas they do self-perform work. So Findorf does have the ability to do self-perform work if we ever would move there where their firm can do that. They are not even guaranteed those projects. They would have to bid just like every other subcontractor that bid package goes out to. Right now, they're just trying to say, okay, here's solution A from the architects. In our good faith and everything we know, this is how much that would cost you as a district at that point in time to move forward with that solution.
Great. Other questions? As this is an action item then, I would move to approve the construction manager recommendation as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Melanie. We have a motion and a second to approve the construction manager recommendation as presented. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. And we invite forward Mr. Lenny Hansen to talk us through dental insurance program. Mr. Hansen, I know we had a preview of this as a discussion item last time.
This one is one that comes up each year, just like any other insurance item. We review the program annually, see if there are components of it that require any kind of adjustment to ensure, that our plan continues to be competitive and kind of within the norm in terms of offerings and coverage levels. And then we review employee premiums as well annually. So what we're talking about is the dental insurance program for employees that operates on a calendar year. So it works from January 1st through December 31st. We only have 2 adjustments to the current design that are recommended for 2024. One is the addition of adult orthodontic services. That is something that probably 10, 15 years ago you really didn't see in dental insurance programs, but the offerings and availability for adults to receive orthodontic care have really expanded in recent years, and it's becoming more and more a typical part of a dental insurance program that you see. So we would recommend adding adult orthodontic coverage as part of the plan. And then the other recommendation is in regards to premiums. The plan continues to perform pretty much on par with where we anticipated budgetarily, and that would continue even with the addition of adult orthodontic in order to just kind of continue to ensure the employee and employer cost share kind of stays in the general same vicinity from year to year. We would recommend a $1 per month increase in the single premium and a $2 per month increase in the family a premium for dental insurance. So that's a really quick synopsis. Again, the rest of the program in terms of all its coverage levels, deductibles, networks, all those sort of things would remain the same as they currently are.
Any questions? Seems very modest and appropriate. Since there are no questions, and this is an action item, I would move to approve the dental insurance program as presented. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Chad. Motion and second to approve the dental insurance program as presented. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and Superintendent Wimmer, we are on to the very popular topic of policy revisions.
Gotcha. So on this, we've got policies for a third reading, so they are deemed for action. We have a slate of new policies, that was new language, policies that were just reviewed and we're affirming, there's no change, there's one of those, policies for removal, and policies that were receiving revision. Between the first and second reading, we had one tweak that we made in committee, brought back, and the board saw that at the second reading. No other changes, no other discussion.
All right, any questions on these items? Sounds like, again, no changes since our last meeting. Superintendent Wimmer, I'm happy to fashion a motion on this. Can I do this in one lump, or shall I recite them generally?
You can do that, the policies as presented, and we'll note that in the minutes
Okay.
For those and repeat those.
All right, very good. Then I move to approve the policies brought forward for a third reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kelly. Motion and second to approve the policies that were brought forward for third reading. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. All right, and we invite forward Mr. Andy Sarno, our Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations. He's going to walk us through, I believe this is our last action item for tonight, which is agenda and resolutions for the September 25, 2023 annual meeting. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. I always appreciate the opportunity. 2 weeks ago, presented the draft of the agenda, contains the time, location, as well as a couple of the resolutions that still exist for the constituents of our district to vote upon. And as you recall, the first one, which is the levy. So I had at that point in time 2 weeks ago, holding dollars, or actually I think hash marks, just holding that. So that's been finalized. I wanted to present that to you, and above and beyond that, just briefly, have the document, which is the budget publication. It will be in this Friday's newspaper. Just a couple of highlights, because this is what we use to accommodate and populate that resolution. So a couple of notes as we're going through this. And again, we have fund accounting, meaning that we're required by the Department of Public Instruction and state statutes to silo our dollars into designated funds. I call them buckets of money. But right off the bat, our general fund, which is the main large operational area that we have, I'm showing a balanced budget. You'll note from the unaudited 22-23 to the proposed 23-24, showing a flat dollar amount within our fund balance. We are using ESSER dollars to balance the budget, as has been directed by the state legislature. There's still dollars available for that of ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. We are levying to the maximum allowable authority. So ran a revenue limit worksheet, as well as utilizing the Baird forecast model, the spreadsheet that I've referenced before, and making sure that both dollar amounts max out per what's allowed per state statute. There was that increase per the state biennial budget, but general fund, balanced budget, utilizing some of those COVID dollars, COVID-related dollars. These numbers will change. We're working on final staffing numbers. Our third Friday count is this Friday. We won't receive final information, property values from the Department of Revenue, final information from the Department of Public Instruction until October 15th, plus or minus those couple of days. But wanted to share that. That's a big chunk of our budget. As we're taking a look at our debt service, you'll notice that there's a lot less revenue coming in because we're utilizing that. We're not levying dollars for any more debt, referendum or non-referendum approved debt. So utilizing that fund balance over the next couple of years until those are paid off. Capital projects funds, we've continued the promise to the community here where we're transferring dollars into that fund. You've already approved back in January a project list associated with this. So we're making sure that we're meeting that promise. We increased it a little over 4%, which is what was discussed years ago when this fund was created. Nutrition fund balanced out, or unbalanced. They're investing in their program. They do have a spend requirement of that fund balance over the next couple of years, but doing well, performed well last year. Post-employment benefits here that we have, other post-employment benefit trust. We did not transfer the dollars into this fund last year to give us some flexibility. As I'd shared here a couple of weeks ago, we've reestablished that transfer for this retiree liability that we have. Community Services Fund, we've built up a little bit of a fund balance again due to unused money last year, but I've decreased that levy just a little bit to make sure that we're being responsible to the taxpayer for these things that are outside of the typical school year. I'll report more on September 25th at the annual meeting. We're required to disclose how we spend those dollars and what programs. Cooperative funds, that's both hockey as well as lacrosse now moving forward as we're the fiscal agent. This is where I'd mentioned with those total all funds, we do add all of them. That's the required posting, but you can't indicate and you can't really say that, hey, Fund 50, which is nutrition, that's an instructional cost for our students. We're required to add them all together. We're a $114 million company. We're a business. We educate students. But I'm adding all of those together, which is, again, a requirement of that. As I take a look at our levy, we were at 43.3 million. We're now at 39.3 million. So we have about a $4 million decrease. Again, we're not levying for debt. The state this year, the funding mechanism, so about a 9.3% decrease in our overall levy. And then as well, when I take a look at the mill rate, which is the taxation rate per $1,000 of assessed value, we had 4 years at $7.97. This last year, we were at $6.37. This year, my earliest projection, and it's subject to change, it may fluctuate a couple of pennies depending on where the vouchers come in and where the property values land, but I'm estimating that we're going to be at $5.13. But keeping in mind, our property values went up by about 12%. And a lot of that is reassessments and property value growth, not new value with construction and things like that. So where the mill rate is dropping, I'm still estimating that the overwhelming majority, if not just about everybody, unless something odd happened with putting on a big wing onto a house or a new construction area, that property taxes will go down this year for the school district because of the $4 million decrease in the overall levy. For action tonight to accept the agenda, and that's on behalf of showing your support to bring this forward to the community. So I appreciate that opportunity.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Sarno? So we had a chance to take a look at this in advance. Obviously, last time, the agenda and such remains the same. Really, thank you for walking through this exhibit. That would be new information since last time. I also appreciate in this exhibit the difference between, you talked about how you add up, do the total all funds, but it doesn't even come close to the tax levy, and that all, of course, has to do with interfund transfers and all sorts of things. But that tax levy, when we're really talking about taxes to constituents, all the numbers on this exhibit are very important. That one is the one that generally garners the most attention, and so it does show the decrease, the decrease over time. And I appreciate the discussion around the mill rate, which I know is an indicator. But I've talked to individuals who said, "Oh, my house value went way up, or I'm gonna pay more." The answer is that's not necessarily dependent on the district, because actually our tax levy is going down. It sounds like it's all a matter of how much one person's property value changed compared to their neighbors and all their other neighbors. So in any case, we've been very fiscally conservative. It's showing up here, and so I appreciate the exhibit. I don't have any additional questions. Kurt, you, anything, I know you're normally our tax specialist, so to speak, but any questions from?
I just want to point out a fact, I was just doing some math, I mean, from the 2021.
Thanks.
Yeah, just a comment here, the 2021-22 mill rate was $7.97. It went down 20% for the 22-23 school year to $6.37. And again, you're proposing, I'm just repeating it, $5.13 for this coming fiscal year starting July 1st of 24, right? So just doing the math, that's about 35 to 40% decline in the mill rate from 2 years ago. So just doing the math, I mean, your property value might, hey, I got questions too. My property value went up by 50,000. But again, that might be, like you said, you could benefit from it and your taxes will go down, or some, but I think it's in a rare occurrence where they adjusted your property. I would like to say most residents are going to see a tax reduction in this mill rate, even though the assessment went up, would be my assessment of.
Correct.
So that's good news.
Yeah.
Trying to be fiscal responsible, and thanks for being that.
Other questions? Then, hearing none, I would move to approve the agenda and the resolutions for the September 25, 2023 annual meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Chris.
Thank you, Kurt. Motion and second to approve the agenda and resolutions for the September 25, 2023 annual meeting. Final discussion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, so for future agenda items, our board meeting calendar, as soon as my computer catches up here. All right. So Curriculum Committee will be meeting on September 29th, 2023, Education Service Center, 4:30 p.m. And as we
19.
Did I say, sorry about that.
Adjust your glasses.
I will adjust my glasses. I should take them off. Pardon me. September 19th, 2023, Curriculum Committee meeting, 4:30 p.m., Education Service Center. Then on September 25, we'll have the budget hearing that we just talked about at 6:30 p.m. at the West Bend High School Silver Lining Arts Center, followed immediately by the 104th annual meeting of the electors at 7 p.m., same place, the West Bend High School Silver Lining Arts Center. And our next board meeting then will be on October 9th, 2023, 5:30 p.m. at Education Service Center. And Superintendent Wimmer, just to confirm, I know there are some years where we hold a school board meeting alongside the annual meeting and the budget hearing, and there are others that we don't. I see it not on the calendar.
Sure, you can. We don't have anything scheduled for right now. Should something occur, we can always place that in and make sure and communicate with people.
Okay, so at this point in time, we're not planning a school board meeting, but we encourage people to look for the official postings, as it'll have the time and date in case anything should change. Any questions on the board calendar? And also, as long as we're on the Superintendent Wimmer, the budget hearing and the annual meeting of the electors, for those who may be attending it for the first time, it's not technically a school board meeting. It's the meeting of the electors, although I will be there at least in the beginning to kind of kick it off. We encourage everyone to attend, because unlike school board meetings where the only ones that are voting are the 7 of us, this is actually all the electors who are eligible to vote will be casting votes at that meeting.
Correct, and I would advise if you're interested in attending and unsure, certainly call our offices. We'll help you to know what to do. But to be a voting member, you're going to have to show proof of residency. We have some pieces in our newsletter that's found on our website for a few more details. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to call our office. We're happy to walk you through that.
Thank you. All right, then moving on, items for follow-up and communication. Any items for follow-up and communication that we haven't already discussed? Any? All right. Not seeing any. So we have a matter that's appropriate to discuss in executive session. So I make a motion to adjourn into executive session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.851C to consider employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, and take any such action as necessary based on its discussion, namely compensation. Would there be a second? Thank you, John. We have a motion and second to adjourn into executive session. Any final discussion? This is an item that requires a roll call vote, so I will call the roll. Ms. Kruger? Yes. Ms. Lang?
Yes.
Ms. Aragot?
Yes.
Mr. Repholz?
Yes.
Mr. Swigert votes yes. Mr. Donaldson?
Yes.
And Dr. Temez?
Yes.
Thank you. Everyone voted yes. That motion carries unanimously. Appreciate everyone's attention and attending tonight's meeting. Have a good evening.